We got to get back to doing what's expected of us as free citizens in this democracy. That means being tolerant, being respectful, staying informed, and being engaged. I'm former Congressman Joe Walsh. Follow me here and join the millions of Americans who are renewing their social contract with each other. The social contract, it's on us. Hey, former Congressman Joe Walsh with you this Tuesday. Thank you for listening to Social Contract with Joe Walsh. I want to start like this, but Keith, can we bring Ilana in? There she is. Welcome, Ilana Redstone. I want to start like this. I have very few times in my life have I met someone or read something, written someone that utterly changed the way I think. My guest today is one of those people, and she's written a book which has completely changed the way I try to approach myself in public life and with people privately. And we're going to get into it. We all, the context, everybody listening to me, and you're going to mostly listen to Ilana Redstone here in a moment, Professor Ilana Redstone. This country is dangerously divided. You've heard me say this a million times. We are at each other's throats. If we don't figure out how to stop doing this, say goodbye to our democracy. Ilana Redstone is a professor of sociology at the University of Illinois. She has written a book that is just out now. I mean, right now, called The Certainty Trap. Why we need to question there it is. Thank you, Keith. There it is, Ilana. The Certainty Trap. Why we need to question ourselves more and how we can judge others less. We've got in the private chat down there, I think you can see it. We've got the link. Go to Amazon and buy this book. If you are as concerned about a dangerously divided America as I am, go get this book. It'll change the way you think. Ilana, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here again.
It's so good to be with you. And I've thought of 39 different ways to start our conversation, but I don't know that I've ever asked you this question. This book, The Certainty Trap, start here with me. Why'd you write this?
I wrote it because it's been a couple of years that in the works. As I was trying to figure out what seemed to me to be breaking down in terms of how we were talking about both in my own camp, on my own campus, in my own classes, but also more broadly, how we were talking about the most heated and most contentious issues, particularly those around race, identity, gender, immigration, right? All of abortion, gun control, all of it. And what seemed to be kind of breaking down in a way that was both more alarming and also more unfamiliar to me.
What's alarming? What did you feel was alarming?
What I felt was alarming was the amount of, I don't know if I would have put it in words in this kind of words at the beginning, but looking at it now is the amount of the way we are contemptuous and dismissive of one another. And so the argument in the book is really I am not the let's all get along and hug it out person.
Good.
That's great. Someone else can write that book. This is really more of just, I'm making observations and making connections so that people, and providing a path forward so that people understand how the way we're thinking and the way we're judging one another is actually incompatible with the democracy that we say we want to preserve and strengthen.
So, but and not to poo-poo or dismiss, can't we all just hold hands, kumbaya, hug, and get along?
Yeah.
And again, that's why I find this book, The Certainty Trap, so profound, because it moves miles beyond that. But there's value in that, correct?
Totally, absolutely. It's just it's not me. Like it's and I think there's absolutely value in it.
And the
And
reason, Alana, the reason I ask, like I know, so many people in this space believe
yeah.
that's all we have to do.
Yeah, I think that it's look, I think more empathy, I think more understanding, those are clearly good things. I think that it's a framing that is kind of not enough, and it's not necessarily compelling enough for most people. You have to really sort of change how you're thinking and change how you're judging people. You have to care about something more than you care about being right.
Do you
Go ahead. Sorry.
Alana, do you believe as I do, and maybe my vantage point is skewed because I've been in the hand-to-hand combat for so long.
Yeah.
Do you believe the nation right now is really dangerously divided?
I do. I do, and every once in a while I get asked the question, "Well, do you really think it's worse than it was?" I mean, I'm 51, so is it really worse than it was, whatever, 30 years ago or something? And my sense is, I can't prove this. I mean, there's all sorts of polling data about, how we view one another, and that
Yeah.
suggests that things are not great, in terms of levels of social trust and trust in institutions and things like that. My sense is that there is, again, I'll just go back to this problem of contempt, and that is really the problem that I'm trying to solve, and that does seem worse to me than it did 2, 3 decades ago.
So drill down, my dear, in
Yeah,
the certainty trap. Let's back up. Why this contempt? Where is this
yeah.
unusual amount of contempt today coming from?
So let me back up for a second, and I'm going to just give you sort of a high level model of how this fits in, like
Awesome.
how this fits into democracy
Yeah.
and why it matters. And then so I'm going to start really high and then end up right where we're talking about the certainty trap.
Cool.
So we hear, I mean, I'm sure this will be familiar to you. We hear people talk about, and we do it ourselves, threats to democracy, and we talk about them as though we usually use language that sounds like, okay, well, the threat's coming from the right, threats coming from the left. If you're sitting on the right, you see the threat in kind of political correctness and that censorious culture, or what is seen as a censorious culture. If you're sitting on the left, you see it in Trump, 2020 election denial, what, right? So we end up, and I'm not saying that these things, I'm not trying to make a claim of equivalence or lack thereof. I'm just saying this is sort of the simplified view.
Mhm.
And so part of what happens when we do that is when we see this threats to democracy as coming from the left and the right, a couple of things happen. One is that we fail to see how they're actually interconnected, which I'll talk about in a minute. How democracy requires political pluralism, which again we'll come back to in a second, and which means we're all in this together. So like
Yeah.
so seeing this left and right thing, like seeing threats as coming from the left or the right, or exclusively as coming from the left and the right, that tends to be a problem in that sense. But the other thing that it does is it really gives us permission to ignore our own role in creating the situation that we're in. And so what I would say, and this actually will be in this part that I'm going to say right now, will be in the next book. It's not in the Certainty Trap book, but it is actually context for the Certainty
Yeah.
Trap book. So if you think about, rather than thinking about a left to right model of democratic stability, think of it as sort of three blocks, a tower with three blocks on it. And each one, if any one of the blocks breaks, crumbles, whatever, the whole thing can come crashing down.
Mhm.
So at the top block, you have what I think of as the machinery of democracy. So this is free and fair elections. This is the separation of powers, limits on executive power, et cetera.
Yeah.
And again, all of these blocks, all of them matter. I'm not trying to make an argument that they don't. So that's the machinery. So this is where when we hear a lot about threats to democracy, particularly as embodied in Trump and right in that kind of in the way
Mhm.
that that's viewed, they are often talking of, not exclusively, but oftentimes talking about threats at that level.
Yeah.
Right under that is a commitment to political pluralism. So a commitment to political pluralism is necessary for any of the stuff above it to have any real grit to it, to have any meat to it. So in other words, why should I care about your free speech rights if I don't have a corresponding commitment to political pluralism?
Yeah.
Right? So there are lots of organizations that do great work focused at that level. So these are organizations that are focused on things like civil discourse, to some extent, organizations that are focused on debating, to some
Yeah.
extent,
Yeah.
political polarization, viewpoint diversity. That's really all trying to reinvigorate and double down our commitment to political pluralism, which is totally, again, also important, as is the top level. The bottom block is, which sits right underneath our commitment to political pluralism, is, you could think of it as neutrality. You could think of it as tolerance. I don't love those words. What it
Yeah.
really is, this is where the contempt comes in. It's a lack of contempt for people who disagree. And so that's where the certainty trap is focused. I'm focused on that bottom block, in changing, transforming, clarifying, learning to clarify and question how we think in this way that it leads to judgment. So you asked the question about contempt. Contempt, judgment, righteous outrage, moral outrage, righteous indignation, those come from certainty. That's not a sort of not so much a theoretical argument as just
Right.
like, this is just the way it is. Like, if you feel morally outraged, it's because you're very certain about some value, belief, or principle, and and somebody else has violated that. Go ahead, you look like you have a question.
What would you label that bottom block? Would you label it tolerance? What would you call
I
it?
don't love I mean, like, some
You don't
people
love
will call it,
tolerance.
I don't love tolerance because not because there's anything wrong with it. I mean, more tolerance is great, but partly because partly because it's become kind of loaded.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of language that's become pretty loaded, and so like I don't. And then people start to mean different things. And the other thing is that, like,
Mm.
some people will put in that space, they would think of words like respect, like
Yeah.
mutual respect.
Yeah.
The reason I don't use that either is because I think it's too strong. Like, I actually think that there's an argument to be made. I'm not sure where I land on this, but I think there's an argument to be made that the default shouldn't be respect, that somebody actually has to earn your respect. And so
Oh,
you can't just give it away for free. And so, like, I really think this lack of contempt is sort of the most, there's not a great word for it. I mean, maybe one of your listeners will have a clever word that I'm not thinking of. Yeah, go ahead.
back up. Okay, so back up to everybody listening to us. And what's unique about this podcast, Ilana, is
Yeah,
because of my unique, weird political journey
yeah,
from far right to far left and now somewhere, who knows where, we've got listeners across the spectrum.
yeah.
What is the definition of the certainty? What is the certainty trap?
Yeah, so the certainty trap, the easiest way to think about it is to define it by how we know we're in it. And so the
Mm.
certainty trap is the contempt, the outrage, the indignation that we feel when we treat our knowledge as definitive rather than provisional, when we treat the answers to complex questions as given and obvious, when we see our own preferred argument as having no downsides and no downsides and all upsides, and when we frankly, well, this is, I think, probably perhaps the less intuitive part, when we fail to clarify our own thinking. So one of the concerns that I'll often run up against with the certainty trap, there are two concerns that come up a lot, and I'll just preempt them right here. One of them is, people will think, well, okay, if you're saying I need to avoid the problem of certainty, are you then saying that I have to believe weird things? Like, are you
Ah,
saying then, right? Like, are you saying that, like, any explanation is, whether the earth is flat or spheroid is suddenly the result of a coin flip? And I go into, obviously, I have a lot more space to go into this in the book,
yeah.
but there's no reason that leaving certainty behind means that everything is just up for grabs and anything is as good as anything else. Because what you're doing is you're thinking about what we know in the space of confidence and how much confidence you can have in it. But confidence is not the same thing as certainty.
Oh, and I want to drill down on that because
Yeah,
I find that fascinating. But I am, as you know, a big gun rights guy, a big Second
yeah,
Amendment guy. That's
yeah,
my AR-15. Don't you dare touch it. I
yeah,
should be able to carry whatever gun I want to carry anywhere in this country to protect
yeah,
me and my own. I am certain in that belief. Um, And anybody who thinks differently is coming for my freaking guns, Ilana. Is that kind of a certainty trap thing?
So the
And I
certainty trap.
despise those people who want to take my guns.
So the problem that certainty. So the goal of avoiding the goal, and just to go big again, the goal is not to avoid disagreement. The
Mhm.
goal is to be able to. It's never to avoid disagreement. It's to live with the disagreement. Yeah,
Right,
sorry. It's never. Yeah, the goal is not agreement. Sorry, I tripped on
right,
my own words. The goal
right.
is not agreement. It's to live with the disagreement. So, I to answer your question, I would say it sort of depends on the problem that the certainty trap is trying to solve is really that problem in how we view one another. There's nothing about it that says that you can't get fired up about a particular issue or be an advocate or an activist, or there's nothing. It's fundamentally about how you view. So, just what I would say to answer your question is not all certainty is a trap. The trap is you could there are interesting philosophical questions about certainty, which I talk about a little bit in the book, but the trap is the contempt that it leads to.
So the
So in your
trap would be,
example,
Ilana, the
yeah,
trap would be, I feel so certain in gun rights that anyone, I believe anyone, and I don't, but anyone who
yeah,
disagrees with me, I hold contempt for because they want to take away my guns, whatever.
yeah. I mean, you can put a finer point on it. Anyone who, I support gun rights, if I'm just making this argument,
Yeah,
and anyone who disagrees with me doesn't care about the Second Amendment and wants to live
got
in a
it.
highly surveilled nanny state.
Okay,
Right,
got it.
or,
Okay.
I support gun restrictions, and I think that and anyone who is opposed to gun restrictions doesn't care about children being killed.
So, and to go back to your bottom box,
Yeah.
and I find this so fascinating, that bottom box is contempt. We feel so certain in our beliefs, so certain that anyone who disagrees with us, not only do they just disagree with us, we have utter contempt for them. And
They're hateful or
we
stupid. Yeah.
they're hateful and
I mean,
stupid.
so that I just wanna touch quickly on the other problem, the other, concern that comes up a lot. So one is sort of this, do I have to believe weird things? The other one is, well, if you're saying, are you making some argument that said, am I making some argument that says we can't say this is good and this is bad, like we're just kind of waffling in the middle all the time? That is also not, and I talk about this a lot in the book, like that is also
Yeah.
not what is required when you're avoiding the problem of certainty. The reason is part of what certainty does is it makes us really sloppy in our thinking. So that means that
Mm.
when we disagree, we are not clear about what it is that, like, what you're bumping up against, that value, that belief, or that principle. It's so I'll just I'm trying to think of an example. Like, so if I um yeah, I mean, like, so if we're, I don't remember if we talked about this last time when I don't know if it was the same example, but like, if we're seeing someone steal a car,
Yeah.
right? If we're standing here looking out the window and we're seeing someone steal a car, and I say, "Oh my God, Joe, can you believe that person's stealing a car?" And let's assume I have every reason to believe it's not their car and they're stealing it, whatever. My expectation is that you're going to say your response is going to be something like, "Wow, that's crazy! Like, I can't believe they're stealing a car." Because I'm assuming that you also think stealing is wrong, right? Like,
Yes.
I don't say that out loud because I'm assuming that you share that value. Now, in something like stealing, it's not a bad assumption, right? But when it comes to, all of these other issues around race, gender, again, all of the ones I listed before, race, gender, immigration, all that certainty keeps us from saying all of that out loud and making our thinking clear. And when we don't make it clear, we don't give the space for somebody else to question or challenge it.
I'm speaking with Professor Ilana Redstone from the University of Illinois. She's come out with an amazing new book that changed the way I think about how we treat each other in this democracy. It's called The Certainty Trap. I think we've got it right there. Why we need to question ourselves more and how we can judge others less. This book is just out. The link is right there. Go to Amazon, get it. Period. So you usurped me. Is there? And I guess then this leads to the difference in certainty and confidence.
Yeah.
Like you say, you've got a chapter titled Down with Certainty, Long Live Confidence.
Yes.
What's the difference there?
So the difference, if you think of, so this idea that our knowledge is provisional, right? So if we think that our answers to questions, and I'll take an example just to put it on a heated issue. Take an example like the relationship between gender and biology,
Yeah.
right? Like, so now you could find there are lots of people making all kinds of claims all over the map about how these two things relate or don't relate. If we treat our knowledge about them as definitive, let's say I make a definitive claim that gender and that gender is entirely socially constructed and has no biological component at all. That then that paves the way for me to then judge,
Yeah.
right? With, again, this like, you're either hateful or stupid. Anybody who comes along and says, well, I think, women are more nurturing, or, men are more aggressive, or whatever. Now, I talk about this in the book as well. Like, there are reasons for that. There are reasons people are wary of those kinds of arguments, and
Hmm.
right, and any kind of argument that smacks of having a biological basis, or being part of nature rather than nurture, because those arguments have been used, historically they've been used in all kinds of sinister ways. The other thing is that when we say something, if we allow the space that something could be nature instead of nurture, it suggests we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that, like, again, obviously this show is not about that in particular, but what I'm saying is that it's the treating the knowledge as definitive that actually gives us permission to condemn, to really be like, you're a hateful misogynist, or you're, an idiot, of somebody who disagrees. So the way that you're moving from confidence is, if you think of the number line that I describe this in the book, a number line from 0 to 1, where 1 and 0 occupy positions of certainty. Particularly 1 is, I'm certain something is accurate or true, or et cetera. Moving from 1 to 0.99 is categorically different from moving from 0.99 to 0.98. So creating that
Mm.
microspace of doubt really makes a difference in terms of how we think about what we know. And there are lots of people, ranging from philosophers to mathematicians to physicists, who have made this point about kind of the provisional nature of our knowledge. What I'm doing is sort of linking it together to how we judge, how we condemn, and how that ladders up to democracy.
Alana, how did we get to the point where so many of us have become so certain in our beliefs, and then contemptual toward people who disagree with us? How did we get so
Yeah,
certain?
it's an interesting question. I mean, there's lots of, so I kind of give a couple of my best, sort of guesses at this in the book.
Yeah.
This is not something that I've dug into as much. I mean, so one example, but I feel like this gets dumped on sort of too much, too reflexively. One is social media, right? Like, and
Yeah.
just, I mean, it has to be, there's, what fraction of the state that we're in is due to social media? I don't know, but I don't think it's zero, because of the way it creates incentives to be outraged. Right? Like, I mean, it sets up incentive structure that goes against everything that I'm saying. So one is probably social media.
Yeah.
Another could be, I mean, another one that I talk about in the book is sort of you know, there's some research, there's some research that suggests that we are sort of not programmed, but like sort of by nature, we simplify our surroundings. We categorize them.
Mm.
We
Mhm.
also when we're presented with vast amounts of information, we need to make categories and simplify things. So is there some piece that, since the volume of information, just the straight up volume of information that we encounter day to day, we've started to, sort of pare that down in a way that has contributed to the oversimplification? That's possible. I don't know that it's any one, yeah, I'm not sure that it's any one particular thing. But I think that it's become sort of calcified.
What's your top answer, your best answer, your most concise answer when someone
Yeah.
asks you point blank, Alana, what's so wrong with being certain in our beliefs? What's so wrong with being certain? You come back with
I mean,
what?
what I would tell what I would say, and I've talked to students about this, I've talked to other groups about this, you don't have to listen to anything that I'm saying. Like, you can ignore everything that I'm saying and say, whatever, like, I don't want any of that. But, don't then tell me that what you're concerned about is political polarization. Because you
Ah,
can't have it both ways. Like, I mean, you can't. So let me just, then I think some of this, let me give you three examples of where this starts to break down and talk about the
yep,
assumptions that I'm making. I'm
yep,
assuming in talking about the certainty trap, I'm assuming that people care about one of two things at least, or both. One is understanding as best they can what's true about the world, right? And so that would be one thing. The other would be sort of strengthening democracy, reducing political
yeah,
polarization, building social trust. If you don't care about either, if you're not trying to optimize for, if you don't care about either of those things. So let me give you three examples. One, and I think I might have said this last time, and I'm going to apologize in advance. One might be if you're trying to win an election. Right, like, I'm good, vote
yeah,
for me, don't vote for that guy, he's terrible. That's
yep.
that's a different set of incentives. Another might be if you're trying to build a following on social media. Again, it's just a different set of
Ah,
incentives, like, it rewards
yeah,
outrage. And the third might be if you are trying to control a narrative by shooting out a fire hose of lies. So, and by lies, I mean something really specific. I don't mean lies where I say you're lying. I mean lies in the sense that you yourself don't believe them to be true.
really,
So yeah, so if any of those things, and there are probably more examples as well, if any of those are true, you are just fundamentally operating under a different incentive structure, and you are what I'm saying, then this idea of certainty and the importance of leaving it behind is probably going to fall on deaf ears. I think the assumption that I'm making is a pretty good assumption for most people most of the time, like in
yeah.
our communities, in our schools, in our our faith communities where people gather. Like, I think it's a pretty good assumption most of the time.
Um, Alana, when I first met you and we first started to speak, and you described
Yeah,
this book to me, and then I've read the book now, it is the closest, and this is what, when people ask me
yeah,
about it, it's the closest I know of The Certainty Trap, this book, what you have to say, to a roadmap um,
yeah,
for how to fix where we are. Explain that, because to me, you do present a roadmap.
yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I hope that's true. I don't want to leave people just feeling, frustrated and depressed.
No.
Yeah, I mean, this is about changing how we think. And a lot of times
Yeah.
people will ask sort of, well, what can I do? Like, how to, and you can't change. This sounds more sort of self-helpy than I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
but, like, you can't change what other people are doing. Like, you can change the way you're thinking, and you can model that change in your own interactions, right? You can In the book, I talk about three fallacies: the settled question fallacy, the fallacy of equal knowledge, and the fallacy of known intent. You can, whether you call them that or whether you use your own terms or language or whatever, you can start to recognize those in your own interactions, you can see them play out once you sort of start paying attention. You can see them play out in social media, you can see them play out in other contexts. um, this is just as relevant if you're sitting in a room by yourself as it is if you are having an interaction with someone. The idea of changing how we think, it and I want to make one point about education, but it's not focused on the interaction. And this is another way that it's different from
Yeah.
sort of these ideas of civil discourse.
Right.
Changing how we think, the interactions change as a result of that,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And so it does. So just about education, it does have really particular implications for education, both K through 12 education and higher education, in terms of how we think about what we know. And um, and what that means. And yeah,
And that's that, and Alana, that's what I love about this book, and that's what I think is so unique and innovative about your approach here. And so I don't know of other people who are talking about changing the way we think. And
yeah.
if we do that, the discourse, all of that will take care of itself. When you talk to your students or anybody else, and they're asking for specific ways and or tools on how to change the way we think, they think, practically, what do you tell people?
3 steps. One is try to come up, and again, you don't have to do this with someone else. You don't even need
Right,
someone to, you don't even need someone to, um, like be a stand-in for the opposing viewpoint. Like you can
right.
do it yourself in your head. Like, so one is try and come up with whatever the position is that you think is objectionable. Try and come up with a version of that position that would make sense to you. Like, and so whatever it is, it's pro gun control, it's anti gun control, it's pro immigration, it's opposition to Black lives, it's all lives matter, it's Black lives matter, like whatever it is, try and come up with a version of that opinion, that position that makes sense to you. And by makes sense, I mean that doesn't fall into any of the 3 fallacies that I talk about in the
Yeah,
book. That
yeah,
doesn't fall into the settled question fallacy, that doesn't fall into the fallacy of equal knowledge, which is just the idea, the fallacy of equal knowledge is just the idea that if the other person just knew what I knew,
right,
they would have the right
right,
opinion, right? So
right,
that doesn't fall into that, and that doesn't fall into the fallacy of known intent, which is this, just the assumption that we know the other person's intent. So come up with a version that would make sense to you, and make sure that that version doesn't fall into any of those 3 fallacies. If in most cases, for most contentious issues, that just going through those first 2 steps is kind of enough to let you people, we can figure a lot of stuff out just by making that sort of intellectual commitment. There are cases where that you can't. There are cases like where you know what, I just can't come up with any version that would seem anything less than totally objectionable to me.
right,
Like I can't steelman the pro-slavery position.
right,
Right, right. So for example, so like when that happens, so this third step, in the cases where that happens, your obligation is to be clear about what principle you're bumping up against something. So
mhm,
then when that happens, be clear about what it is that you're bumping up against. And someone else, if they wanted to, they could challenge you on that. They could disagree with you about that. You don't have to change your mind. So like in the slavery case, it might be something like, I think all lives have equal moral value. Right. It's just sort of that might be a kind of bedrock principle. And my commitment is to express it in language that the other person would understand. So
right.
I don't get to say, I can't come up with a version of slavery because it's evil, because that's evil is, we don't mean the same thing, right? But I can say, I think all lives have equal moral value, if that's my principle that we're sort of bumping up against. And that's it. So those are sort of those are 3 steps, and you can do that. You can think through all kinds of things that way. It does take practice, but that's it.
It does take practice.
Yeah.
Challenging and clarifying our thinking.
Yeah.
Drill down more on clarifying. Talk
Yes.
about clarifying our thinking.
Yeah, clarifying is, so if I'm having a conversation with, so one of the examples that I asked my students, this
Yeah,
was, I don't remember, this was last year. And I said, let's say that I was trying to give them a new example that they hadn't heard yet. And so I said, let's say that you're having a conversation. Maybe you're the age you are now, maybe you're older, whatever. You're having a conversation with the parents of a friend, and the friend is gay, and the parents want to try and convert him, want him to be straight, and we're just going to bracket. This is a thought experiment. We're going to bracket the laws about conversion therapy. We're just going to, in many
yes,
states, we're just going to, because we're
yeah,
just running a thought experiment. And so, like, you're interacting with these parents. And so, and let's say you don't agree with them. And so, what can you say? Like, if you want the conversation to be able to continue, like, so what would happen if you said, for example, well, that's just the most homophobic thing I've ever heard. Right. So,
hello,
like,
yeah,
now, this is the fallacy of known intent. Like, now and I'll come back to that in a second. So like that would be pretty much a conversation killer. And they would understandably, I assume, be defensive and right. So you could say, well, here, let me show you this research study that shows that conversion therapy doesn't work. Right now, you could do that, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, but that does get into this, excuse me, this fallacy of equal knowledge. It's
Yeah.
not going to necessarily change their mind, because if we all had the same information, we wouldn't necessarily agree when it comes
Right.
to heated issues, right?
Right.
So what could you say then? You still want to express, you still want to be, right? So what is the thing what is the principle that you're bumping up against? When I did this, the last time I did this with students, there was a student who she said, I believe that people should be able to love who they want. This was what and like, that was it. She didn't make any assumption about their intent. She didn't make any assumption that like, you don't have the right information. She
Right.
just said, right now, what could happen is part of, in terms of changing how we think, part of what that means is understanding that any idea, any idea, value, belief, principle, etc., can be questioned. Anything, nothing gets a free pass. So if I say, I think I think people should be allowed to love whoever they want, someone can press me on it. They could say, well, do you think that are you advocating for polygamy? Should I be able to marry my dog? Whatever, like, and so I don't have to change my mind or change my position or even have an answer for it. But they get to, because nothing is exempt from being challenged or criticized or
But
questioned.
by the way, Ilana, stop there. And I know you and I have talked about this. All ideas are open to questioning.
Yeah.
Now, I think that right there would blow away a lot of people in our.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so you had originally asked the question about clarifying our thinking.
Yeah.
Like, this is why those, like, if we stay with the sort of sloppy thinking that certainty leads us to, we can't question and challenge each other. And if we can't
Yeah.
question and challenge each other, then we end up in this contemptuous, right? Then we're left with our assumptions and our oversimplifications, right? And so that is actually really important. There's always issues. There are always issues. Well, I shouldn't say always, but many people have issues that they want to take off the table, right? Like, do I really have to talk to my Holocaust denier neighbor? I don't.
Yes.
I have a
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like, but there's always a lot of people have something they want to take off the table, and you can do that. Like, I've had students do that before. I had a student last semester who said, this was the height of the protests about Israel and
Right.
Gaza, and she
Right.
was just like, nope, can't do it. And I was like, that's totally fine. Like, that's her thing. Like, she was like, and I said, as long as we understand that the more of us take off the table, the worse
Exactly.
off we all are. Yeah.
Are we, Ilana, are we there? Like, have we been in that position now for a while where we are taking more things off the table? Do you feel?
I think that we do it. I think that a lot of times we do it without realizing that we're doing it. So, like, one of the things that I'm not sure if I put this in the book. I think I did, but assumptions aren't certainty, but certainty leads us to forget that they're assumptions. Right. And so, like, I don't necessarily think I'm not of the belief that it's a conscious effort where people are deliberately saying, like, no, you can't, no, don't touch that. Like, I don't get that. That's not my impression. I think that there are feedback loops. When you treat something as given for long enough, then it sort of it becomes part of just how we talk and so the way out of that is to say, which I think is the right way to think about kind of education more generally, is you can question anything. Anything and everything. Yeah.
So like, Ilana, again, my political background. So I come
Yeah.
from MAGA. I voted for Trump in 2016.
Yeah.
Then I woke up and now I've been a 6-year hell-raising never Trumper. I
Yeah.
still engage with MAGA folk every
Yeah.
single day. They used to be my friends. And what I've learned to do is model a lot of what you're talking about, changing the way I think.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if this relates, I know it does to a degree. My only goal when I engage with these folks who tell me, "Joe, Biden didn't really win in 2020," my only goal is to try to understand why they think that way. And I feel like if I have a greater understanding, then I won't have as much contempt. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Totally. No, totally. And I mean, the election, it's something that I talk about specifically in that I do go through that example in the book.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, one of the things that certainty does is it erodes trust in institutions,
Mhm.
particularly in education and in the media. It absolutely erodes trust in institutions. And so we need some again, we need a critical mass. I don't like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to, you don't need every single person in a democracy to trust an institution, but
Boom.
there's some critical mass or some tipping point, right, where you can't have, especially when it divides along political lines, half the country that doesn't trust anything that's being said. Even in but the problem is that, like, so lots of people have made that argument. What we sort of the piece that doesn't get often said along with it is that there are reasons that we have that people don't trust those institutions.
Yes.
Like, there are actual, and a lot of that, and again, I have more space to talk about this in the book, but a
Yeah.
lot of that has to do with certainty. Not all of it,
Yeah.
but a lot of it.
Do you I've told people this about your book,
Yeah.
and maybe you've said this, maybe it's in the book, maybe I stole the line from you. Like, I feel like you're trying to help talk a country off the ledge.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that would be nice. That would be nice. I mean, I am under no illusion that this book is, in a country of whatever we are, 330, 340 million people, um, that it's everybody's cup of tea. But I do think that it could change things. I mean, if I think that, with sort of, I think that there are enough people out there that are looking for some other way to sort of navigate all of the rancor
Yeah.
and that we're steeped in, and someone who will just say, look, you can ignore it, but then don't tell me you're worried about political polarization.
Well, and this is why,
Yeah.
Professor Redstone, I
Mhm.
adore you, because my whole mantra is, if you wanna save this damn democracy, it's on us. Don't look
Yeah.
toward Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or Chuck Schumer or
Yeah.
whoever. It's
Yeah.
on us. We have to change. And what I love about your book is it's a version of it's on us. We
Yeah.
individually
Yep.
have, and not, it's not his problem, or it's not his we have to change the way we think.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mhm.
I think that's
Yeah.
magical. I think
Yeah.
that's important.
Well, hopefully that lands well with lots of people. So that's
Um,
so
hey, Keith, put that up. Can you put it up one more time, Keith? Ba, 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 ba. There it is. The
yay.
book is The Certainty Trap by Professor Ilana Redstone. Keep it up, Keith, for a moment. Thank you. Why we need to question ourselves more and how we can judge others less. I believe that this is a super novel and the most helpful approach I know to help a terribly divided country right itself and save our democracy. We have to change the way we think. We have to avoid the certainty trap. Get this book, buy this book. Alana, you can take down, Keith. Thank you. I We're 60 days from an election. I'm
Yeah.
out every day, just ba ba ba. And
Yeah.
I think this is, and I think this is the most important book that's come out this year. I
Yeah.
mean that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I totally, completely mean that
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
gives us away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Hey,
Hopefully.
you dedicated the book to your kids and you said, without naming them, I hope they continue to move through the world with a little open space in their hearts and minds.
I did. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I
Yeah,
really like that.
they're good kids most of the time.
Go to Amazon, everybody, and buy this book. I'm going to have Ilana on again in the near future here. I want to continue this dialogue. The book is The Certainty Trap. The Certainty Trap. Go buy it. Go to Amazon, get it. The link is right there. I'm going to continue to promote it on all of my platforms.
Amazing. Yeah.
Well, I really, and people don't know this, my history with this lady. I invited her on my podcast for a 10-minute conversation because
Yeah.
I was told to do it. And after 55 minutes, my producer said, stop the conversation because he didn't want to have to edit anymore. I couldn't stop talking with her and listening to her. Ilana Redstone, professor of sociology at the University of Illinois. The name of the book is The Certainty Trap. By the way, Ilana, is that website still up in your own website?
IlanaRedstone.com. Yep.
Ilana with one L, all one word, Ilana
Yep.
Redstone, ILANA Redstone.com.
Yep.
Go to that website, ILANA Redstone.com. She is on what I still call Twitter.
Yep.
At Ira Kresh, IRAKRESH. Go buy this book. Ilana, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Remember to listen, share, and follow The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been The Social Contract with Joe Walsh.